Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast, the show for football industry leaders who want to stay ahead of the game. We bring you the latest insights, trends, and stories from the experts driving innovation and progress in sports business worldwide. Join us as we dive deep into the ideas and initiatives transforming the world of football. From sustainability and innovation to player development, fan engagement, and everything in between. Our goal is to unite the global football industry and drive positive change and progress. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. Today, there's a different kind of episode that I want to bring to you. Actually, I was part of a very fun conversation on the iWorkinSport network with my friend, the CEO, Joao Frigerio. Now, we discussed a lot of things, and I think, you might get some value out of it. We discussed a little bit about the trends in the, let's say, events industry. We talked about artificial intelligence. We talked about how to maximize the experience at an event. We even answered a lot of the questions of the people that were that joined live. It was an interesting session, very fun, and we thought that it would be valuable for you guys to listen to it. As always, once you are done with it, if you have any feedback or any questions, feel free to reach out on social media, and don't forget to subscribe, to share the podcast with your friends, with your colleagues, with those that are looking to enter the industry. I think this episode might be of value. Joao also shares some interesting research around the event industry, some frameworks to consider, and the type of events and what you can get out of them. Anyway, I think what's best is that you listen to it and let me know what you think. Nothing else. Let's go into the session, and hopefully we'll see you next time for the next episode of the World Football Summit podcast.
Hello, hi man, how are you? Good to have you here, and thank you for doing this with me. We were talking before. We decided it would be quite interesting to do this as a kind of co-hosted event. You have a very popular in the industry podcast as well, and we thought it would be fun. So I will start leading this, but that will certainly become a conversation. But first of all, thank you for joining.
No, thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's a pleasure, and looking forward to this, Joao.
Very good, very good. So, Jaime, the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is to maybe talk a little bit about yourself, your story, how you started working in sport.
Sure. Again, thank you, Joao, for having me here. My career actually didn't start in sport. It was my first job was in a cosmetics company, an American cosmetics company. I worked there for several years, but deep down, I always knew that I wanted to be in the sports industry. So it was 2013 that I enrolled in an MBA at IE Business School with a module in sports management, and I just I knew that was my thing. I started also collaborating on the side with several sport organizations. For instance, one of those was a company where that actually today is what everybody knows as the women's football team at Real Madrid. I've also done things for other sports like basketball, for example, in the Spanish league. And after several years, I left that cosmetic company and became sort of a freelance. And out of those projects that I did for sport businesses, I got the opportunity to join a Spanish fitness company called Centro Supera, that they have gyms all around Spain, Portugal, and now from what I understand, they're entering the Italian market. So very interesting. And then, for pandemic came, what happened there with the sport and the fitness industry. And one of the things that I did there was set up my own newsletter. And so I started creating content, basically just sharing what I thought was interesting from a sport business perspective. That eventually evolved into me doing some analysis and getting in touch with people in the industry. One of those was Miguel Ángel Hernández, who has a popular newsletter here in Spain called Final Score. He was kind enough to add my newsletter to a list of resources that he had available for sports business professional. And it turns out that one of those people looking at that list and subscribing was Gian Alessi, who's the co-founder and director at World Football Summit. And after one of the issues or editions that I shared with my newsletter, he liked what I shared. It was an article about a company he knew. He reached out and he told me that he had a role at the World Football Summit available. I interviewed and I got the opportunity to join back in 2022. And since then, just been doing, a lot of content stuff, marketing, communications, relationship with the media, you name it. Here at World Football Summit, having fun and meeting great people like you, Joao. So yeah, been fun.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to to have met you as well. And I can't remember if we met at the first World Football Summit that I went, maybe in 17, but it's been some time. Before we get into the discussion, I think I also want to ask you to talk a bit about the World Football Summit. Today, we're going to talk about sport business events in general, but obviously, you have the World Football Summit coming up in Sevilla in a few weeks' time. Oh, by the way, to everyone watching, maybe I forgot to mention at the beginning, we will give a free ticket to the World Football Summit at the end of the podcast. So, first of all, this is an interactive session. So, if you have questions, please don't hesitate. Write down your questions there, but also prepare to participate in the draw to win the ticket. And last thing, just to talk to the audience, Jaime, is I usually do that at the beginning. I think I'm a little bit untrained. I stopped with the podcast with the live interviews for a bit. But yes, it would be great if anyone watching can write down in the comments where you're watching from. Right? Normally we have a very international crowd, so it's always good to see who we're talking with. Now, having said that, so people are prepared now to try to get a ticket for the World Football Summit. Jaime, tell us a bit about that.
Sure. In a nutshell, for those of you that don't know about our event, we are a global platform that connects people working in the football industry. So this means essentially people that work either at clubs, at leagues, at federations, but also people that may be working in business that either want to enter or have entered the football industry, or even just emerging talent, maybe not in the industry yet, but they do want to get an opportunity to have a career in sports. No, so at the end of the day, we connect everybody that has an interest in growing the sport that we all love, but from a business perspective. No, and first edition was in 2016, and since then we've done 24 events across the world. So this year, for example, in June we did one in Mexico. Last December we did one in Saudi Arabia, which we're actually repeating. December.
Yeah.
Yes, and we had a good fun there, huh? Well, as you know, Joao, write that down. 2nd, 3rd of December, we'll be back at it again in Saudi Arabia. But the closest event that we have is on September 18th and 19th in Sevilla. That's going to be our flagship event, World Football Summit Europe, and we're looking forward to that. We're going to have, we're defining the last pieces of the puzzle in terms of the speakers and the program. But I think we're going to have top tier speakers from clubs like Liverpool is going to be there, the European Club Association is going to be there, La Liga is going to be there, but also top tier brands, no, like Turkish Airlines is going to be there, and Amazon Web Services is going to be there, Deloitte is going to be there. I mean, you name it. All those that are looking to have a say in the football that we all want to develop, let's say, are going to be there.
Cool. Very, very good. Jaime, just so you know, we already have some people like Bijit Sarkar is watching from Madrid, Anglo Premier Translations in Namibia, Gianluca Ruggieri in Milan. I don't know why I don't have the comments from LinkedIn loading in the system, but I can see here that Maria Machin is an Uruguayan watching in France, and Johan is in Dubai, and Pav in the UK. Great to have everybody with us. Now, Before I think we talk about the benefits of attending sports business events in general, maybe let me start with a theme of career in sports, right? Which is what we cover here at I Work in Sports mostly. And maybe ask you, what are the the main trends that you see in jobs in sport?
Sure. Um, well, I think uh, where to start? No, traditionally you've seen that a lot of people, when they ask them why they want to work in sport, they always say it's because they're passionate and they really like the industry, which is obviously
Yeah,
good. But I think we've come to a point where you need more than that. No, right now passion is necessary, yes, but you really have to understand where you add value to a sports organization because there's so much demand. And especially in a time when I think football, at least, is becoming more professional, you do see certain trends in terms of the type of role that people are looking for. So, for instance, I see a lot of clubs looking for experts in data management and not only being able to analyze data, but also interpret the data, right? I actually
yeah,
heard a phrase once that I think is good, which is data is the language of business, but stories are the language of people. So it's
yeah,
being able to effectively get those data, analyze it, but also being able to make decisions out of that. So you have to have both. Also, obviously, understand where AI is going to take us. And so I think really understand how you can use AI to for any part of the any job that you may have. I think that's also important to understand. And then also, I think there's a piece of how that is going to help us become more efficient, not only as professionals but also as teams, as working teams. And finally, everything related to content creation. I think we're at a point where being able to create content is something that everybody needs to do, and it opens up a lot of opportunities. No, if you
yeah.
look at, for example, what Juventus, I think they're one of the greatest examples out there. No, they've actually brought
Mhm.
in-house people that were creating content about the club that were not working for the club, but they were so they were fans and they were so good at it and at driving new audiences and engaging with fans through their content that they said, why are we should well, let's not compete with them. Let's actually bring these people in house. No, so I think that's another trend worth looking at.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned AI, you mentioned data analysis or really understanding data and content creation, right? You know what? I knew that we were going to talk about that, about those trends. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about, trends in on the recruitment market. I actually went and checked, did a bit of research here, and I went to see our. We currently had the job fair, or not currently. We recently had the job fair here, and one of the panels that we do with some professionals, some recruiters, is exactly about that. What are the trends that they're seeing, how companies are recruiting, and so I reviewed that. I identified actually seven trends there that I'm going to quickly share with everyone.
Please.
Hopefully this will make a nice highlight for people to take note. But important, and you mentioned some of them actually. You know, digital and social media proficiency is one that is really a lot in demand, right? Data analytics slash, I mean, some sports science as well. At that panel, we had Nicola Rogers, who's a HR manager at the World Aquatics, was mentioning that. That's what they're looking for. Those two traits are very important for them at the moment. Uh, um, there were some of them talking about flexible and transferable skills,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's a big one.
There is another topic that I think it's similar to that. How you were adaptable is something to take into account as well. Robert Viscovay, who used to be a recruiter for Elevate, for FIFA, for UEFA, mentioned you know about how career paths and are progressing nowadays. So more and more you have teams of people that, for instance, people that will work in one event. actually that group of people sometimes move and work in another one and another one and another one. So
Mhm.
this ability to transfer knowledge from one place to the other
It's a
is
big
quite
one.
important. So obviously, very much linked to that, there is emphasis in global mobility,
Yep.
right? So you'll be able to move in the international experience. So if you talk to companies or agencies, or that they will work with the Olympic Games, but also with World Cup, with Formula One Grand Prix and things like that, you will be moving around, right? I think this is inherited to sport, but this flexibility is quite important to them. What else? I think uh, on the recruitment side, for people to know, another important trend that they raised is this adjustments to new work environments, especially post-pandemic. They're trying to increase focus, to remote work and more flexible work arrangements. And I think that the final one that we noted here was no, I think I already put two of them together. This emphasis in innovation and adaptability. I know this is the one that I think you mentioned as well. Is what Nicola said too. That they want people to come with a mindset and a willingness to change and to have an impact within the federation. So this being very much alert to innovation and be adaptable is quite important. I hope that I explained those well. This, things that I've been perceiving as well, but obviously I've been hearing a lot from the industry. So I think what I wanted to do is do a bit of research and share that with everybody else. I don't know if you have any comments on that. Just so you
Sure.
know, Bob
Yeah.
said that was very true what you said. Also
Yeah.
mentioned another interview that you gave at with Sporting Global.
Yeah, I saw that. Thanks, Paf, for that comment. And actually, that was a long time ago. So thank you for being, is following along. Those were great points, Joao. I think if you were to sum it all up, I would say that at the end of the day, the only thing that's constant today is change. So whatever we're talking about in terms of trends and whatever we're talking about in terms of the role today, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I think when you go into it, and especially in sports where you see professionalization, growth, just new roles emerging, you have to be willing to kind of be uncomfortable in doing things that you're not maybe fit for. So that's what I was saying at the beginning. It's not only being about, yeah, passion is important, but where can you add value? And adding value is something that when you go in there, you just have to be ready to just dig in to team sport at the end of the day, right? And so, it,
Yeah, when we talk about passion, what I hear a lot from recruiters, and I agree that it's essential, but it's not the deal breaker, because everybody to be considered, you know, to live that type of very intense life in sports, and sometimes there's no weekends and you work at night, and it's a different type of
yeah,
job than other industries. You really need to be, well, maybe it's different, some role or another you don't, but when we're talking about the sport in general, you need to be passionate. However, that's not what's cut it, because you will be competing with a lot of people that are also passionate about it.
right.
So it's one of those things. uh, Sometimes people put a lot of emphasis, and yeah, I think I should, get this job because I'm really passionate about it. But that's not what will make a difference. I think this is the basis where, they need to start from, but then pay attention to the other topics, for instance, that you mentioned, be adaptable,
Yeah.
understanding, following the changes. It's probably the most important factor.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's kind of like if you think about it in three circles that overlap each other, it's really thinking about what are you best at, and then where can you add value, meaning not only where you can add value, but where the sports property or the sport business that you're working for needs that value. And then there's another circle which is passion, of course. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the other two, it's not going to be enough.
Right. But I mean, we talked about being attentive to technology, to changes, to AI, creating contents. But if we bring back to the main topic of the conversation, then why should people that do that, consider attending
Sure.
sports uh, business events like conferences, summits,
You know what, Joao?
conventions?
I just think that in a world of technology, there's something that technology will never replace, which is human relationships, personal connections.
That's right.
You know, and that's what events are for. At the end of the day, you go there for 1 day, 2 days, whatever. And you and me, we met in Asia. But what was it? 20 minutes that we had a conversation over the course of
Yeah.
2 days. But that was enough. That was enough for us to keep in touch, to have this idea, to just catch up, and that stands the test of time. So I think that's where industry events add value. And here I would assume you know better than me, and because you've been at at a lot of events, and the amount of like the connection that you feel with someone that you're talking face to face, it's just you can't replace that with technology.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's quite important. I think we can at some point discuss a little bit also of content that you find there. But
Hmm.
this personal connection, I think in the end of the day, ends up being the most important thing. Obviously, today you can connect to anyone virtually. I mean,
Hmm.
we would talk on WhatsApp or LinkedIn or things like that. Those things help, but definitely I think it makes a difference to be able to meet in person. And the thing is, you never know how helpful I think that will be. You can just be sure. I think that it will be very helpful, right? So I try to go to as many events as possible. Obviously, sometimes it can be a little prohibitive. You can't be in two places at the same time. There is, you need to choose one or another because of, um, economic factors. You need to, yeah, see where you're going to invest your money. But I'm a big proponent. I was just thinking that very recently, my most recent consulting agreement that I did was with someone that I met in person at a long time ago when I started to go to Sports Health in Monaco.
Uh-huh.
Uh, One night I went, maybe it was 2006, and I met him there. And ever since we've been in touch, and we always talked. And then suddenly, a project comes, and he calls me and says, "João, we need you." Obviously, since then he's been following me, but I'm very sure that if he knew me only online, that opportunity
Mobility.
would just because we
Exactly.
met a few times in a little more even sometimes informal, environment. That's definitely very, very helpful.
Yeah. But I was going to ask you, I mean, because, and sorry to interrupt though, you've been at a lot of events. And one of the things we discussed at some point is there's also right now with new technology and all of that possibility to connect to an event virtually. And I think
Yeah.
you once told me about I think it was a virtual job fair, that you organized. And I think people can get a lot of value out of that. I don't know if you can share that example.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. This is something that we're thinking how we can continue. We're also learning. We're also going to talk about the landscape, how things are changing, trying to learn a few things. But yeah, I mean, when I think it was 2019, before the pandemic, I decided and announced in May to our partners that we were going to do a virtual event.
Hmm.
And at that time, I was actually at the Education Expo. So imagine an NBA fair, but online and only for sports business programs. And the idea was that we were already helping those schools to place their students in the market or to meet recruiters and all that. And then we thought that we could do more. We could help them attract, students, and we did that. So the second semester was 19. We did a lot of research, and we launched that. Then we were already thinking of doing something similar as a virtual job fair.
Hmm.
But for May 2020, we had our job fair normal. scheduled to Lausanne. But then COVID came, and then people, started to cancel things. I think that the World Football Summits, you were going to do the first one in Africa that time, and was, I think, canceled the week before. You didn't really know what was going to happen, and everybody, was taken by surprise. But because we had already done a lot of research, we were able to do the first one, to do a to transform the in-person job fair into a virtual one. And I think at that time we were the only event happening almost like in the world, at least in sports, because we already had done the research before. And so that worked really well. It was great. And I think that there are, some benefits, some super cool things in virtual events. And I'll
Uh-huh.
give you one example. Imagine that, for instance, this year we had Adidas again at our job fair, right?
Yeah.
But they came with four people from their headquarters in Germany,
Uh-huh.
right? So we had four people there, but from Germany. So it was, they were recruiting for positions there. When they participated in our virtual job fair, they had more than 20 people participating because they could connect from all over. So there was recruiters from Germany, in the US, in South America, in Asia, from the headquarters. So I think there was much more opportunities. They could talk to many more people. For them, was interesting. For the attendees, they had more opportunities to speak with recruiters. But then, obviously, I think there's a lack something, the handshake and the eye to eye and how you make an eye contact can be quite important too. But listen, I think it could be a great addition. There's, I always think that it's better to go in person if you have that option. But this year was the first time as well that we had an online option for people just to come and watch the presentations. There's some value to that. Obviously, it's a less expensive ticket, more affordable ticket. They could still apply for interviews, and I think there were some people that ended up having interviews with the recruiters there. So it's an addition, but I don't think it's will ever be a replacement because, as we just mentioned, the in-person contact is super, super important.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, when you do events,
I actually wanted to ask you how you do your online option for
yeah.
the World Football Summit, and there's also a question here asking you if there will be a return to Durban.
Yeah.
The World Football Summit website still says to be determined.
I'll get to that in a second. And we also, Joao, we can't forget about Gianluca's question. We'll get that to the end if Gianluca doesn't mind, because I saw he posted that earlier. And I'll be happy to answer
Okay.
that question for Gianluca, okay? Anglo, in terms of, not sure if that's your name. If not, anyway, about Africa, hopefully I can't say just yet, but our aim has always been, since we did the first edition, to go back to Africa. Hopefully we'll have some positive news there soon enough, but I just can't say much yet. But it is something it's on the radar. All right. Job to your question, and that's what I was actually going to say before. Oh, thanks, Timothy. Yeah, to your question, Joe, this is something that we realized at World Football Summit, especially during the pandemic, how the virtual component, while may not be the same, it is not. Especially in today's world, with all the digital platforms and all the technology, you can actually reach a global audience. No, I mean, at the end of the day, you're reaching a lot of people from all over the world. And not everybody can make it to the event. It happens. No, it is tough. I understand if, for example, I tell you now, hey, come to Sevilla next month. It's difficult. Sometimes you have to get a visa, or you have to get your ticket, and it's not cheap, and you have to get your accommodation. So having a virtual component is important. So, for example, in our case, what we do is, if you register for the event, regardless of you buying a physical ticket or a physical pass or a digital pass, you can actually register like if you were there, and effectively you have access to the panels, which you can watch live. You can access, and more importantly, you can access to the full list of attendees to the event. So, in essence, you can always WhatsApp, or not WhatsApp, but just contact through the app, message someone directly, regardless of where you are in the world, and try to network with that one. No, so which is kind of important. Obviously, it's not the same as you were to reach out and say, "Hey, let's grab a cup of coffee and speak for 10 minutes." But still, you do have that possibility of reaching out at just as me if I was there, right? So that's how we try to solve it.
Right. Now, let me go to Gianluca's question then. So,
Go.
and here from Milan, my question for Jaime is, what have been the main changes you have observed in the World Football Summit since you became head of content?
Okay, Gianluca, thank you for the question. It's a good one. So many changes. Where to start? Look, I think one of the big efforts that we're trying to do is create content that actually is useful, regardless of whether you come to an event or not. Right. So we believe there's a need really for the industry to become more professional, and for that, what we understand is we have a thanks to all the people that participate in our events, whether it's an attendee or speaker, brand, whatever. We do have a lot of knowledge, no? So and access to people who know, not maybe us, but for example, one of the first things I did when I joined the team was create the podcast. Why? Because you're able to connect with people from all over the world and share what different people around the world are doing in terms of who's actually driving change, no? And we try to have that content available throughout the year. So it's our content, I mean, our podcast, our newsletter, our blog. At the end of the day, it's just trying to have as much resources available as possible for those that are really interested in the industry, whether it's because it's a hobby or whether it's because it's because you understand business. So, for example, we also have reports that analyze different dynamics in the industry. Well, a lot of brands download that because they want to understand where the industry is going. No, so that would be the main difference, I would say. And going from content that was maybe just focused on events itself, but something that would be useful for anyone, anytime during the year.
Very good, very good. There is a comment from Tim here as well. Timothy Barton. Here's in one of our groups in the We Work in Sports community. He was the one asking for Durban. And he also says, I'm glad you mentioned the issue of visas. It's a real problem for people in Africa. I'm lucky as I have European passport, but others sometimes have to travel to another country just to get a visa.
I've seen it a lot. A lot of people that actually want to join our different events, whether it's in Saudi, whether it's in Europe, you get a lot of people that will reach out and they ask for support. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to support, but it's nothing really that much that we can do. But I understand it's an issue.
No,
That's why I highlight it.
it's incredible. It's not only for our events, like whenever we do our events here in Lausanne,
Mhm.
uh, what people request, we do send a letter if they request, so they can address to the embassy, so attesting that they bought the tickets, that they're coming to participate in the event. We hope that that helps. But we had people that was prepared to go to the Olympic Games, had tickets but couldn't go. They couldn't get a visa to come to Europe. That's really really unfortunate. Uh, Jaime, what about what can you say in terms of tips and advice for people to make the most out of events? So when someone goes to the World Football Summit, what type of tips you give for them to prepare for the event once they're there? How they should behave. Any advice there?
Several things come to mind. First, you have to be very strategic about it. So you really have to understand why you're going to an event. Why have you chosen that event, and what's the outcome that you want to get out of the event? So do you want to get a job in sport? Do you want to generate business because you're a founder? Do you want to? I mean, just really understand what you're there, and then be sure to do some research and spend time. And for example, in our case, we open up the app with the full list of attendees a couple of weeks before the event. So make sure you have time to go through the list, understand who's going and who can be, uh, you know, worthy of having a valuable conversation. And it doesn't have to be, a top tier speaker. It can be someone who's working in a brand that you don't know about. Maybe that's actually going to be a more meaningful conversation. So that's the first thing. And then the second piece of advice, and this comes from someone who recognizes himself as being as a true introvert, is don't be afraid to speak to people. Because at the end of the day, I think, especially I see it in folks who want to enter the industry. They kind of like are intimidated by walking up to someone and just really start talking. And but sometimes they forget that everybody at some point was in the same position, not working in the industry, and then looking to work in it. So I think one of the nicest surprises that I've seen is how open people are at these type of events just to talk to you. Obviously if you're not interrupting a conversation, but if you see someone walking around having a coffee, just even to say hi and just introduce yourself. You never know I mean, you said it yourself, Joao. You met someone at an event, and then years later, you're working with that person. But it all started with a conversation. No?
Yeah, the person
So
became a friend, and yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
so those would be, if I had to leave it at two. And then third piece, don't let things just stay at the event. If you meet someone there and you have a good conversation, make sure you follow up. Follow up, have reach out. Doesn't have to be the day after, 2 days after, but let's several weeks go by and say, hey, we had a nice conversation. Hey, looking forward to being in touch. I don't know. Those are my tips. I don't know, Joe, what you think. I would like to understand because maybe you have a different take on it than me.
No, I'd agree totally. I might add a few things there, but I probably will start from the end, because when I think about it, I think that following up is maybe the most important thing to actually turn the event into something useful. Because if you just go and don't follow up, it will mostly be not useless, but because you have normally have many objectives, but especially on the connection with people, I think that following up is very, very important. I think you're right in terms of trying to understand the goals of what you want, but also set your expectations correctly, right? Don't expect that you're gonna go there and make, like, if you have a commercial head, that you're going to make sort of many sales. That's a process. See people that you want to meet, and trying to prepare, and most of the events, or many events, will provide you a list of people. Try to understand who you would like to meet, but also prepare of how you will introduce yourself as well. Try to work on what we call an elevator pitch. And you call it elevator because it's supposed to take the time of just a very short elevator ride for you to introduce yourself in a way that will get someone's attention. You don't need to tell your whole story there. And obviously, that might change a little depending with who you're talking with. Because, yeah, I think if you have a good idea, then the preparation to understand who is going to be there, or the type of people, and try to prepare in advance a few approaches, you will see that will be very helpful. Because what happens to me a lot, because sometimes, because of time, I don't, find the time to do the preparation that I wanted. I feel that I prepare, but every time at the end of an event, I feel, oh, I wish I had, checked this sort of beforehand, or whatever. Or if I knew this person was coming, I would have brought this other thing here or something like that. But at least, some general ways to present yourself. Because in the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's not just about who you are and what you do. Try to see the angle of who you are and what you do could be of interest to that person. So if you and I know that sometimes you're learning, you go to a place because you don't really know much about what's going on, and that was how I think events used to work back then.
Hmm.
But now with internet and with the lesson advance, and so if you have this time to plan, the profile of everybody. You Google them, they're on Wikipedia or whatever. So, and you can do that actually quite quickly as well on your phone. Once you identify someone, try to think of an approach that will touch something that is interesting for them.
Hmm. Yeah. And what makes you
It's
unique is at the end of the day, you really have to understand the context of, that person you're trying to talk to is going to have 100 conversations. How can you make sure you stand out? That when they go back and say, oh, I spoke to this person, and this is I don't want to make this up. This is the guy that told me about this. That's what you need, So that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There is another question here from Gianluca. In fact, there's two, but for people watching on LinkedIn, I would try to find a time to actually post the link to YouTube, so you can maybe move there, because I don't see your contact your comments in the system. I'm checking on my phone, but for you to participate in the draw, I think you need to be able to post and be read by the system here. So in a minute, I will post the link, the YouTube link here for you to check it. Anyway, question from Gianluca. Can you discuss a time when a controversial topic was spotlighted at the World Football Summit? What was the outcome, and how did it impact the overall dialogue of the event?
Sure. Um, okay, if I can explain the topic. I'm just not going to name any names if you don't mind, guys. Okay, but basically, there was this one time during an event where there was a speech about a certain speaker talking about how a certain closed football league would damage the overall football system. And at the end of the day, he was calling out, you know, all the wrongdoings it would make. Now, the thing is, we pride ourselves in being neutral, meaning you may be agreeing or not agreeing with what a person is saying on stage. But I think
Mhm.
what the end of the day is what we learned is you really have to listen and really have to understand the arguments, pro or cons against a certain topic. Especially in our case, we don't, we don't support anybody. We just want to bring people together and have meaningful discussions. And obviously, sometimes those discussions they're not friendly. It doesn't happen. I mean, it does happen. It's like in any industry, right? So I think what we learned is, look, we cannot prevent people from speaking about certain topics or giving their strong opinions about something, um, as long as there is respect behind it, right? So that's kind of like the lesson that we learned there.
Very good. And for events like this, and we're going to talk about a few types of events that are out there as well. Some that's for instance, I think the contents, it's the driving factor to that. Some may be the the networking part. Some are actually the work as a trade event, really. Um, but especially on when there's controversial things and then goes out in the news, is it normally good, or is it so normally bad for the events? How do you feel about it? Because
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Sometimes, when those things happen, you do get the visibility, right? I think it's not really, the perception is more about the underlying goal of the event, right? As long as it's not being understood as a platform where people are promoting their message, I think people are going to understand that regardless of where that thing was said, it's more about the message. And in our case, it's neither good or bad as long as we don't position ourselves, as long as we're true to what we believe in. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So we believe in neutrality. We believe in giving opinion to everybody. If someone comes to World Football Summit and says something that's a bit controversial, I think you can avoid that. But what you can control is how you react to that. And in our case, we like to be neutral and give space to that. As long as we're true to that and we are comfortable with how we reacted to it, which is trying to give voice to everybody there, we're good to go.
right, listen, there are more interesting questions coming here. This one is on LinkedIn, so I need to read it here. Sorry. Uh, wait, what happened? So, as head of content, how do you position the World Football Summit as a leader in shaping the future of football? Specifically, how do you ensure that the summit not only responds to current trends, but also proactively sets the agenda on crucial issues like sustainability, inclusivity, and technology?
Good question. Um, Look, I think on one hand, we cannot deny. I mean, one of the biggest things we pride ourselves on is the network that we have. So really being able to tap into that network and getting knowledge out of them as well in a way that, so for instance, I'm going to try to put an example here. if I know that Liverpool Football Club is an example in terms of sustainability, which you mentioned there, who better than them to actually explain it? So what we do is I invited the director of impact, Rishi Jain of Liverpool, to the podcast, and I had a conversation with him about all the efforts there. No, so I think that's kind of like not really about what we say. It's we understand our role in the industry, which is bringing people together, and when we bring people together, we always like to help them share their message. So it's really identifying the challenge here is identifying who's really making that change, who's really doing the things that are meaningful for the industry and that others can learn from, and giving them kind of like a platform to do so, right? And so it's not what we say. I don't think I think everybody, and it doesn't have to be a director of impact at Liverpool. I think everybody here has an opinion on the football that they want, the football they need in terms of being professional and what needs to happen. It's just how do you make sure that you give voice to everybody? And I think in that sense, being part of an event is part of that conversation. And then obviously using those channels to kind of like give voice that helps reach different parts of the world. Because and for example, after that conversation with Liverpool, we had clubs from Spain reaching out, clubs from Mexico reaching out, say, hey, is it possible to meet that person? Because we want to do the same. So that's kind of like our role there. Okay, we share the voice, and then when people ask for that connection, we try to make it happen.
Very good, very good. And hi, man. And and how's the relationship with other events? I mean, uh, there are many sort of events there in the industry. Perhaps then we can talk a bit more in more detail about the stages of business events. But yeah, is that a bitter or a friendly competition? Is there room for collaboration?
Sure. And, I think when the industry is at a point where it's changing so much, I think the events industry needs to change as well. We actually have partnerships with other event organizers. So for several years, we've worked with the Global Sports Innovation Center, powered by Microsoft. They do their events, and was actually collaborating, bringing people to each other's events. Just recently, during the summer, we closed a partnership with the folks at ESP. They are the one that do the used to do the Espovis event in Germany, one of the largest sport industry events in Germany, and we're collaborating with them. They're doing their sports market media event in December in Munich. So check that out as well. And we're helping them out in terms of building a panel certain around opportunities in football, and on branding in football. So to your question, Joe, I think there is room. I think the model has to evolve. I think the industry has to evolve, and it does make sense that we work together to create better events for the entire industry to benefit. Because if what we're saying is, the industry needs to become more professional, we really need to make sure that we're connecting the right people at the events so that those relationships can happen. No.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. We obviously have also partnership with many events, but for us, I think it's also a little special because I think we're in a niche type of event that doesn't really exist. I think out there, and
Mhm.
it's very focused on the recruitment, on talents, on a career. So that actually it makes sense. In fact, that's all of those events come and maybe find talent there. So we had the World Summit participating before. We had Soccer X participating before, and a few others. The Global Sports Week from Paris had
Mhm.
and there with us as well. So for us, obviously, that makes a lot of sense too.
I think we can go into
Let me
actually
see.
big question if you don't mind, because I think it's good. It's relevant to the conversation that we're having. If you don't mind, Joao, I don't you see it.
Say that again.
Maybe we can go and answer Bijit's question, which I think is relevant
I
to the
was I was I
conversation.
was just going to exactly. I was just going to that. Actually, going to put it here on the screen. Vijay Sarkar says, in a competitive landscape of events, how the World Football Summit differentiates itself in terms of branding and positioning, and what are the strategies you use to attract key industry leaders to the summit every year? By the way, you also launched a new branding last year, and maybe you can talk about that as well. But please, let's get to Vijay's question.
I'm tempted to ask you that question, Joao, because you go to so many events and say, what makes World Football Summit different? but I'll give you my take on it. Which is at the end of the day, it really depends. See, we're not looking to be the largest event. We're not looking to be the biggest sports event in the world. What we aim is to be the largest football industry event in the world. So that means that if you work in football, you have to be at World Football Summit. So we may not have the largest in terms of attendees, but what we want to make sure is that if you're there, it's because you want to create opportunities in football. That's what we kind of niche down, if you will, within the overall sports industry. And I've seen that, those conversations, and it's not me making this up. I've actually had people come to me and say, look, we understand that if we want to go into, and these are, businesses, hey, we understand that if we want to meet people working at football clubs, this is where we need to be. If tomorrow our objective changes, he told me, if we go into other sports, I know I'm not coming here. And that's fine. If it's not going to be worthwhile for you, don't come. And actually, their strategy, and being completely honest here, they've shifted to other sports. But at least I want to make sure that if they're there, it's because they want to generate opportunities in football, and that we're helping make that happen. But that's my take on it. Feel free to disagree, Joao, or whoever.
No, listen, I think it makes sort of a lot of sense, and I think it all comes to the power, the connection in the industry, quality of people that you attract. I think in the end of the day, that's what makes an event, and there are two, I think, main factors for success of an event. It's the contents, so the quality of people presenting there, and the audience, also the quality of people watching it. And once you can attract a good number, of both, then I think it's a hit. It's almost like then people feel that they need to be there. It's a bit of how they call that. I forgot. It's a term that said you use also for communities, and the value of it increases with the number of participation, right? So, and I think this is quite important. How you keep sort of bringing not only good, maybe the content is the initial factor to attract audience, but I'm sure as well that once you bring, the speaker, uh, companies involved will also send the delegates, and that makes an interesting audience as well, and therefore that makes it valuable for people that are not even speaking or not participating to just go there as well, and so on and so forth, and for companies to go and exhibit
Mm-hmm.
there too. The World Football Summit is not an event where people would go different, for instance, from iWorkinSport or Sportel. That is another type of event where people actually go to watch the stands, to talk to the companies that are exhibiting. But because there's so many, high profile people going there, then it makes it quite interesting for the exhibitors. And then obviously there will be some of the exhibitors that will hopefully match what people are looking for there too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you agree with that, what I was saying, because in my mind, I see clearly, I think, two types of events, and also we're talking about it beforehand, because I see the I work in sport in a different type, because I see that the majority of events today, they start from the content, and people go there. Maybe that's the first point of attraction, and then it brings the audience, and then it brings kind of the exhibitors. Whereas another type of event, I can cite the Sportel, which I mentioned several times. That was an actual inspiration to me, where people actually go basically to have meetings. I've been there for many, many, many years, and probably I've watched a handful of presentations. They go there to sell rights, to buy rights, and I try to do something like that. That people would come to our job fair. It would be companies looking for talent looking for jobs, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
connection that we tried to make. And then I actually added the content at the auditorium, you know, just because, people would be there. I didn't want them to spend a lot of time doing nothing. So let's put some additional value to it. But it was different type of thinking. Normally, I think I see people starting from the content and then going the other way around. I don't know if you think those are the two ways that people think of events, or if there is a different one. There's maybe it's also the networking part, maybe the most important thing, and then also contents will be an addition to that.
I
Or
think
even
it
if,
was,
how important is that when we are analyzing an event, whenever you're deciding to go, right?
yeah. I think that was a great way to frame it, and I would actually urge anybody listening to kind of like keep that framework in mind, because that was a good way to frame it. I think to your point, I think networking is kind of like the essence of an event, regardless of its main objective. I would argue that in today's world, it's even more important than the content itself. Probably many years ago, the content was more important because it was more difficult to access that
Yes, for
information.
sure.
Today, at the end of the day, through technology, through different platforms, you can watch the panels from all different events. You can access the content fairly easy. Where, but when you go into the networking piece, that's kind of like the unique thing. It's kind of like when you go into a football match, the life experience is the life experience. You cannot substitute that. But this is kind of like the same thing. Being able to be there and experience it and meet people, that's like the essence of an event, I would say. And that's what makes it unique and different. That's what makes it stand out. No? So I would argue that networking, regardless of the models that you described, which I think was a fairly accurate description, is going to be one of the things that people are going to value most.
Thank you. I'm just actually posting something here on to our audience on LinkedIn to make sure that they can actually see the link if they need to go to YouTube to actually participate in the draw. So I see that we're reaching the hour mark. It's a nice conversation. Didn't really see the time coming. So what I will do, Jaime, I know that we have thought of a few other topics, but I think we covered mostly everything. There's a few other questions from the audience here. Maybe if we can give them preference. I always say that I give the audience, preference,
Sure.
and then we could do that and do the draw
Sure.
for the World Football Summit, right? Also, reminding everyone that there's a link in the description for you to listen all the more than 100 episode podcasts or podcast episodes at the World Football Summit, hosted by Jaime. There's in the description of the video. And there is
Appreciate that.
also a link to join the We Work in Sports community, where if you don't win the free ticket here, there will be a 15% discount to all the members there.
Yep.
So Facundo Molina, Febro Molina, from Argentina, says, with AI rapidly advancing, could you share how it has been discussed in past World Football Summit events, and what feedback you received from the industry leaders on the topic of AI?
Yeah. I think it might seem, well, Facundo, thank you for your question. First of all, what I have seen is that, especially this year, where we had an event in Mexico and in Saudi, everybody understands that we're still at a very early stage. And I would argue that while AI is not new, the level, I wouldn't say uncertainty, but the level of, call it curiosity, of where the space is going to go and how it's going to impact the industry has risen so much. Because I think a few years ago, people were not realizing the potential that it had. That's what I would say. So when you speak to them, they recognize its potential, but they're also curious to see where it's going. That's what I would say. And obviously, how that is going to help businesses not only in general become more efficient, let's just say, how they're going to be able to leverage AI to be more efficient, improve their business operations. And everybody's talking about generating content and personalization of the content and the experience and all that. Yes, but it's also, it has a layer underneath that it's going to help be more efficient and at the end of the day be, I would say, more profitable.
Okay, talking about AI, Jaime, can you maybe just share quickly? I think it was really interesting also conversation that we had, how AI has been helping you, for instance, in the production of your podcasts.
Sure. Happy to share that. That was a fun conversation, Joao. How I use AI. So imagine, for example, if I were to interview Joao, let's make an example here so you guys can understand. If I were to interview Joao and imagine that I had him already previously on the podcast, I would download a written transcript of the first episode that he came. I would have a call with Joao to understand the topics that he wants to discuss. And then I would probably go into, do some research about his career. So we would pull that information, all of that, and put it into a language, an LLM, right? So this could be your ChatGPT, this could be Claude 3, you name it, no? If I need to do some research, I'd probably go into Perplexity. So at the end of the day, I'm playing around with different tools, no? And then I would go into ChatGPT and say, look, this is the transcript, this is the profile, this is what I want to talk about with you this time. Could you help me prepare, a list of questions and help me draft that? So basically, I use it as my research assistant and help me prepare a list of a draft. No, so then I refine the questions, and then I send it to Joao and say, "Hey, these are the questions that I've thought about, and please feel free to share, your feedback." And then once we record the episode, what I do is I download the transcript again. I ask ChatGPT or whoever to analyze the transcript to help me identify the main conclusions of the episode, highlight that, and actually help me draft a LinkedIn post, which is obviously you need to create several iterations of it and you need to refine, but it's a pretty good approximation. And the beauty of this is you can actually ask it to interpret different styles, right? So you can say, write it in a formal style, write it in an informal style, actually copy whoever, if you have a content creator in mind that you want to create that type of voice, why don't you use this person's style? And then you get that. So at the end of the day, I'm actually able to be more efficient and actually use that. Now, I could go into more detail, but obviously, for example, there's tools out there. I haven't tried them myself, but there's actually tools out there that potentially could, for example, I'm having a conversation with Joao and for whatever reason there's a connection issue and I can't really understand what he says, I can go into a tool, type in what I thought he was saying, and more or less get an approximation of his voice to kind of make up for that lost piece. So there's potential is huge, and I don't want to go into details because it's going to be for another session, Joe. But in a nutshell, that would be it.
No, I think it was very useful. I mean, I use it as well. Maybe I need to learn a bit more from you to use it even better. But it's certainly helpful. Listen, how are you with time? Because there's more and more questions arriving. So
And
maybe we
go
can
for
try to
like
do a few quickly. Um,
sure.
I will summarize one from Timothy from this translation. So he mentioned that it's been an event in Barcelona that was participation in four languages. I know that in some of the events you also do simultaneous translation, right? I think that's what he's asking. And I don't know. I think he was based in Africa somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, he was in.
I remember now. But you do have simultaneous translations in your events, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we do have simultaneous translation at the events. Some panels are in the local language. So, for example, we had an event in Saudi last year, and there were some panels. Actually, I remember there was a conversation or an interview with Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga, where the journalist was asking in Arabic, and Mr. Tebas was answering in
He was
Spanish.
replying in Spanish, and
Yeah,
people was listening in English. Yeah,
yeah. And
I
and
remember that. No, I remember
at
that.
the end of the day, and whenever we go into, I mean, we're a global platform, yes, but we recognize that it's important to adapt to local language, and there are some panels usually that are in the local language. Now, in Mexico, for example, we had panels in Spanish. In Sevilla, we'll have panels in Spanish. It happens, you know.
Very good. One interesting question here as well is, what strategies does the World Football Summit use to engage students and emerging professionals? Or is the summit primarily designed for senior industry leaders with extensive experience?
Not at all, Gianluca. On the contrary, we try to welcome everybody, and we recognize that at the end of the day, the future of the industry belongs to the students, no? And we actually have, fortunate because before Sevilla we've sold out, but we do have a special student pass that actually includes, or in the past we've included the possibility to actually meet one-on-one with people working in the industry, whether it's a business or whatever, And because we recognize that in order to have that opportunity, you need the door to open. Now, obviously, we just opened the door. At the end of the day, and it's going to be you having to demonstrate the value. And but any student can come to our events. We've never, blocked the students or any out of our World Football Summit events. Different story is that we do like exclusive events with it, which happens. They're more controlled, but in general, we're really open to students being there because they're part of the industry as well. And in fact, we have a
And
partnership with the Football Business Academy. We've had partnerships with Johan Cruyff Institute, with the Real Madrid University. I mean, you name it.
yeah, yeah. Maria Machin uh, says, do you think that the students attending the World Football Summit and participating in world sports events to network with professionals could consider it as some sort of inversion? I would imagine investments
Yeah,
of time and money on their future.
definitely. But
I think it is it is an investment for I think everyone participating. To be frank, not only students.
I was actually going to turn the question to you because you are going to know much better than me on this one. If you want, I can give my take, but I'm intrigued to see your answer on this, Joe.
Yeah, no, but as I said, I think it is for sure, and not only for students. I mean, anyone participating there, whether they're paying a full price for tickets or maybe not, but they still need to invest time and travel and all that. It's always an investment. What's now? Then the question is, if you're investing something, then you need to calculate the return on that investment, and I think that's how you need to understand what are the KPIs, what should be measured. It's not only you go there and you will convert into a business right away. Sometimes it happens. I remember going to a World Football Summit. It wasn't in Sevilla. Was it Atletico Madrid? Maybe did you a few years ago? Maybe was in Madrid.
It was in the
Anyway,
Athletic Stadium. No, I wasn't in the company, but it was in the stadium at Athletic.
yeah, so maybe it was just before you joined. And I went there. We had this project of the Education Expo, and we sold two or three. We signed two or three people there. Was more than very fast return on what we invested. But I think even if we didn't close, a deal right there, would still be worth it. I mean, sometimes it's in the very long term, but it's important, I think, for students and people starting to try to go to these events. This will add a lot of value, and yeah, you can benefit from student rates.
Yeah.
Listen,
With
I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just want to be cautious of time for everybody. We actually had more people here a few minutes ago, and now I think they kind of need to drop out. So since we still have some people here, what I will do is I will find here. We're going to start to collect uh, this. I will share with people. There's a screen here. So if you type in the comments hashtag WFS, if you can maybe start doing that, and we'll see if this works. There should be some entries appearing.
Hmm.
Uh, write WFS in the comments. We have the first one, second one. Let's see, there's a few more coming in. Let's just wait a little more. Maybe what I'll do while we're waiting for people to write the hashtag WFS. From Bijit asks another question. From a marketing perspective, how can the World Football Summit leverage the influence and insights of high-profile athletes like Chiellini to strengthen brand partnerships and drive engagements with fans and stakeholders?
Good question, Bridget. Thank you. You know what? I think we're in an interesting time because athletes, they're becoming more and more businessmen. So Chiellini, for example, does a lot of work outside of his, building his personal brand. And it's interesting to see how someone who understands the game from within wants to transition into a career like, related to management. No? How can we leverage that? I think what we try to tell them, and we've had several players be part, or former players, if you will. So, for example, last year we had Juan Mata. Well, he's not a former player, but Juan Mata from Comebol has been part of our events. Ivan Rakitic, also now playing in Croatia. I mean, all these players understand that if they want to start creating a life after football, they need to come to, I won't say World Football Summit, but in general industry events to kind of like start meeting people outside of their usual or traditional network within football, right? How can we leverage that? Well, one of the most interesting panels that we always have at the events is, them participating. So Rakitic had a very popular panel. Juan Mata had a very popular panel, because they understand really the nature of the game. And if they're able to bring that knowledge into a business side, let's say, I think the overall industry benefits, and our role there is to kind of give them a platform to do so. No, so that's kind of like our role. We, for example, have a partnership with FIFPro, no, and they're also trying to help players transition from a career playing football to outside football, whether it's women's football or men's football. No.
Very good. Thank you, Jaime. We do have some people also watching still on LinkedIn, but don't think that they can add that. We have 9 entries. We actually had many more people participating before. Maybe we'll wait 2 moments to ask 2 people to write the hashtag this time. I think last time I announced it a bit earlier. But anyway, so I think it will be easier for people who are participating to win. Let me just go and press draw and see who is going to be the fortunate winner of the free ticket.
All right.
Okay, so
Julian, congratulations.
Junior Hervé, congratulations. That animation is really cool. So, so you got a free ticket to the World Football Summit. Send us an email or contact me on LinkedIn just to make sure that I have your contact, and I'll put you in touch with Jaime and the World Football Summit team. All right, Jaime. Before we go, we're already 15 minutes past. I think what we had planned, but it's been a nice conversation. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I want to thank you, Joao. Thank you not only for the opportunity, but also for the work you do. I think it's important that, people who want to work in the industry have a platform like yours. And I'm sure that, you're helping out a lot of people out there. So I want to thank you also on their behalf.
That's the intention. We can't do it alone. So without, partnerships like with you and John and, everybody else, other companies as well, we wouldn't be able to do it. So very, very happy. All right. Jaime, I really hope to see you in a few weeks' time. Well, maybe remind everyone the dates of the event.
Sure.
The World
September 18th, 19th. September 18th and 19th, we're all waiting for you in Sevilla. So,
Yes. And if you didn't win the free tickets, there is a link in the description for you to go to WeWorkinSport.com. If you're not a member yet, you join there. There's a 15% discount to all our members. So yeah, maybe you can enjoy that too. Bye-bye, everyone. Hope to be back soon with another interview. Maybe going back to the other formats, although I really liked this one.
Yeah,
Jaime,
repeat.
yeah, we'll do that. Maybe I'll go to yours next time.
Guys, thank you for being out, for all your questions. Been great.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Ciao, everyone.